I'm talking with Stella Ting-Toomey from California State University at Fullerton, author of Face Negotiation Theory. Stella, what is face?
Face is about communication respect issue. It's a claimed sense of social self-worth that I believe every human being wants and needs. But it's definitely about communication identity, respect issue, and other consideration issue.
Is it a private thing or a public thing?
I think it's both. Depending on what culture we are talking about, I have a feeling that for the collectivistic, group-oriented type of culture like Japan, China, there's a distance between the public self-presentation of face as well as the private self. Whereas in the individualistic culture, such as the larger US culture or the larger Australian culture, there might be a closer correspondence between the public self as well as the private self.
Can you flesh out the differences between those two types of culture?
Basically, individualistic culture emphasizes the importance of I identity more so than the we identity. That we emphasize on taking personal initiative, we emphasize on personal achievement, whereas collectivistic cultures tend to emphasize teamwork, group orientation, group harmony issues, that we should always be considerate of other people's face. Group harmony should always supersede our individual self-interest or self-needs. Broadly speaking, US overall, and Australia, and many of Northern European cultures have been identified as more highly individualistic. In comparison to many of the Asian cultures, such as Japanese cultures, Chinese cultures, Korean cultures, many of the Latin American cultures, and also actually many African cultures. According to Triandus, actually, overall speaking, in terms of global level, almost about 70% or so of the cultures subscribe to some forms of collectivistic values in comparison to maybe less than 30%. So to me, it's very critical for us to really have a good grasp of the collectivistic value orientations.
We are making a video that's going to be shown to students. What if it really turns out poorly and students are just bored out of their gourd? I mean, they just, it's not good. We've got some face work to do. What kind of face work as a child of a collectivistic culture would you do, and what kind of face work, if it holds true to form, do you think I would do?
If we play out our own scripts, which although I mean we could do that, from a collectivistic angle, I would say, well, it seems like none of you are really paying attention. It must be really my fault. It's because I didn't really set up the context for you with a clear focus of what you should be watching for. So therefore, you are all falling asleep for me. So maybe we'll try again next week. So I will do a little bit of self-effacing statement. Alternatively, if you're playing out your individualistic script, I'll say that it's obviously you didn't read the book 3 times, therefore you're falling asleep. If you read the book 3 times and watched this video, you know this video is a brilliant video. So I will ask you again to read the book 3 times and come prepared to meet those authors halfway. Goodbye.
But that comes hard to you. You're laughing when you say it. Because
it comes hard to me, but I've used that because, I mean, being a teacher now for, I don't know how long, 1981 to this point, that I don't think human beings are trapped in the role of their culture, that I think we're capable of being changing, adaptive.
You've talked a lot recently about self-construal. This is not a household word. What does self-construal mean?
Self-construal is really the idea of your construction of sense of self, whether you're constructing it from a more independent angle or interdependent angle. But I think the terms gain currency is because a lot of interpersonal, intercultural researchers are grappling with ways to how to unpackage the colossal terms of individualism, collectivism to more specific directions. So there's difference between cultural level analyses and individual level analyses. And construal of self is the individual level analyses, personality, attributes, and tendencies. With independent self tend to be emphasized more on personal initiative, personal accountability, achievement. In comparison, interdependent self tends to emphasize more on relational harmony issue, cooperative issues, etc.
What I hear you saying is that it could possibly be that even though I was raised in an independent or individualistic society, I could have a self-construal that was much more interdependent, and so that maybe I would be self-effacing because within my culture I'm way off to one side. Is that possible?
And that's a very accurate perception. That while we talk about cultural patterns as the central tendencies of a curve, you might be the outlier.
3 standard deviations away.
Exactly. Not to mention, insiders always, especially the Western or U.S. insider, always think that they are not typical Americans. So they all want to claim that they are a little bit different from the rest of the majority of the group norms. So you're right that definitely I'd say in the pluralistic or heterogeneous cultural system, there are more noises and there are more diversity of personality type attributes. So you could be born and raised in an individualistic society, but your personality tendency, maybe even your family upbringing, could be fairly interdependent oriented.
You and your colleagues recently have found that self-construal, this individual identity, is a better predictor of conflict style than culture. Does that bother you? Does that make it seem like, oh, my theory was wrong? Or
No, I was very excited.
why?
Yeah. Because like I say too, culture also is not a static entity, it's dynamic. I always don't believe that, I mean, on a broad level, as a theorist, we have to start somewhere and say that, all right, overall, Australian culture tend to be this way, or the Korean culture tend to be this way, or Mexican cultures. But we all know those are such broad labels that we could never capture the immense diversity of human behaviors under a broad label of this big colossal concept called Mexican culture or the US culture. So I was very pleased in terms of finding that, of course, on the individual level, there's tremendous variations.